Back to work on the 24th.
I'm assuming it'll all be the same.
Okay,
Susan, last opening?
Haha.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone here. And at this time, I would like to give the opening to Councillor Bill Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. October being the month to celebrate Thanksgiving in Canada, I decided to look into the history of Thanksgiving. In Bible times, according to Exodus 34, verse 22, it says, "You must celebrate the festival of harvest with the first crop of wheat, of the wheat harvest, and celebrate the festival of final harvest at the end of the harvest." In Canada, like in the United States, Thanksgiving originated in the colonial period, arising from some of the same European traditions. In gratitude for safe journeys, peace, and a bountiful harvest. The earliest celebrations were held in 1578, when Frobisher held a ceremony in present-day Nunavut to give thanks for a safe journey of his fleets. In 1879, Parliament established National Thanksgiving Day on November the 6th. The day has varied over the years. Since 1957, Thanksgiving Day has been celebrated in Canada on the second Monday of October. Today, I want to give thanks for the privilege of living in a community like Steinbeck, where we have been given so many blessings. Thanksgiving is about being thankful and sharing with those around us in celebration, which includes sharing with those that are less fortunate. I'm not saying that we have arrived at the pinnacle of reaching out to helping the needy, but we have many groups that have made a tremendous effort. I want to recognize some of these key ones in our community and focus on the final one. These groups have made a big difference in the shaping of the social and spiritual well-being of Steinbeck and area. First and foremost, the many churches of Steinbeck are making a huge impact in people's lives. Second, we have organizations that work for the good of the community, and I will name a few, but I'm sure I won't get them all. Today House, Pat Porter Center, Teen Challenge, Soups On, Steinbeck Community Outreach, DARE, Headway, Youth for Christ, Rock Eastman, Anna's House, the Lions Club, Kinsman Club, the Rotary Club, Steinbeck Family Resource Center, Envision, and Eden Health. But last but not least, I want to focus on Southeast Helping Hands. Recently, the media reported that Southeast Helping Hands had collected over 10,000 pounds of food to be distributed to the needy in our area. Thanks to the generosity of our community and the help of youth groups. This prompted me to call their director, Hank Clausen, to ask how his organization started. Mr. Hank Clausen was with the Lions Club back in 1980 when a young mother with young children whose husband had left the family with no resources approached the club for help. This was the beginning of Southeast Helping Hands, which Mr. Clausen has faithfully directed for 40 years plus. Today, they assist 320 families with an average of 4.5 mouths per family with food in our surrounding area. They do background checks to validate the need of the families. Southeast Hands has also assisted other communities in our area when their food banks run short. Hank tells me that they are in the process of expanding their current location because of a shortage of space. As the city grows, so do the needs. Here's an opportunity for the citizens of Steinbeck to assist in a worthy cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiebert. Council, we have the agenda in front of us, looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Pinner. Any comments?
No comment.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council, we have the minutes of October 4th, 2022, the regular council meeting. They start on page 1. We've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Swagstra. Any comments?
No comments.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none. It is just a little before 7:35, so council will go down to number 9, administration. We have got the accounts payable. 9A, the back of the book, we've had a motion, or we've all had time to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Siemens. Any comments?
No comments.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. And we'll look at 9B, the financial statements. These are ending September 30th, 2022. Also at the back of the book. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Hiebert.
No comments.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we are now exactly at 7:35, so we will go back up to our public hearing. This is referring to Variance V-2022-26, referring to 75 PTH 12 North. It starts on page 4 on our agenda. And at this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Thiessen, would you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of variance file V-2022-26 is to permit a north side yard of 11 feet 10 inches, whereas the C3 commercial corridor zone requires a north side yard of 15 feet, according to the Steinbach zoning bylaw. The owner is proposing an addition onto the east end of the existing Days Inn Hotel, and that addition, that's the area that they're proposing to have the 11-foot 10-inch side yard. Notices pursuant to the Planning Act have been completed, and no registered objections have been received. One letter of support has been received, however. And so City Administration is recommending that City Council approve this application for the north side yard variance under file V-2022-26, subject to the outcome of this public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Thiessen. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak? Just take the podium, state your name, address for the record, and continue.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Evan Schinkel from Schinkel Properties and Innkeepers. As you've already heard, we're here to present the side yard setback for a 3'2" variance from 15 to 11'10". Our lovely hotel Days Inn was built in the year 2000, and it was our very first family hotel. It's a fabric of our passion in the hotel industry. And one of our proud accolades is this hotel has accomplished many awards, including the Chairman's Award 5 years in a row. And speaking of proud, we're also very proud to be a part of Steinbeck and contributing to its growth in our community. Next slide. As you can see here from the aerial, we're at the corner of 12 and Penfield, with neighbors Smith Neufeld Jodwin and Salisbury House. Next slide. Here you can see our plans and what we hope to do. We'll have an outdoor patio area in the front, upgrade our breakfast area, improve our interior, and enlarge our fitness room, in addition to the 24 units at the back. The reason for this variance is as a result of the size of hotel rooms currently. Back in the day, they weren't quite as big as they are built now. And we see a great fit to have extended stays with kitchenettes. And it requires just a slightly bigger footprint. And we're unfortunately constrained by the location of our existing building and the center hallway, as well as the parking lot that was built in 2000. Extended stay rooms with small kitchenettes are essential to the feasibility of our addition and critical to our operations. Next slide. Another enlarged view of our plans. Next slide. Again, you can see here at the top of the screen the 3'2" bump out more clearly. Next slide. So we proactively discussed these plans with our neighbors, and Earl Barish from Salisbury House has supported us in this variance. We've also proactively discussed with Smith Neufeld Jodwin and offered trees for buffering as well as low-lying shrubs or even architectural fences to beautify our property line, to make it as best as possible. We will continue to be proud owners of this hotel and continue to invest in the beautification of this great property, as you can see from its current state and what we plan to do into the future. If our neighbors Smith Neufeld Jodwin were to apply for a variance of 12 feet, this would equal to a total of 24 feet separation between our buildings, and we feel this would be appropriate, and we would support that. This addition on our property is at the back, or the east side, where it's adjacent to Smith Neufeld Jodwin's parking lot. We do not feel this affects their current building, or if they decide to any future buildings. We are simply expanding on what has already been established in 2000. This building will be in like kind and quality to the existing structure that's been established 20 years ago. And all that being said, we're very excited about this and look forward to the future. Thank you so much for your time, and happy to answer any questions you have.
I'll just have you stay there. Any questions of council for the applicant? Go ahead, Councillor Hiebert.
I have a question there. You mentioned that with your variance of 3 feet, 2 inches you're applying for, and if Smith Neufeld Jodwin would do the same, there's 24 feet, so my math is right, there's 30 feet between the two buildings now?
Good question. I can't say for sure what distance they built from their current property line, but I would imagine it would be near that, very close to if I had measured it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further, council? Okay, thank you. Take your seat. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file?
I want to thank Evan for his comments. I want to thank each and every one of you for your service. I don't say this very often, but with election coming up, one of you may not be here next time I'm here, if I do come back here. So let's talk about variances. This all seems perfect, and I've been very critical of council, as you know, on a personal level. Some of you know better than others about how readily you guys grant variances. Variances are an exception to the rule. There's a rule of law. And the rule of law is, okay, we have a bylaw, and we have a bylaw for a reason. And everybody has to comply with the same law. So much so in Headingley, when one of my clients built a house by error, 1.5 feet, okay, too close to one side, you know what Headingley made them do? Lift the house, destroy the basement, pour a new basement, and put the house back down. Because unless there's a very compelling reason for variance, it should never be granted. Otherwise, everyone's going to apply for variances all the time. And hence, maybe that's what we have now in the city of Steinbach. So what is the test? I put it to each and every one of you. What is the test? What is the test for granting a variance? I hope you know it, because you guys have been here for a very long time. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I assume all of you guys know it and know it well. You just don't grant variances at will. So you're being asked to grant a variance today, 3 feet. So does it sound like much? 15 feet, the law is 15 feet in a C3. And they want to change it by 3 feet, so let's say that's 20%. 20% change is significant. Right? All of us would agree to that. So we have slides and we have talk about, okay, we want to build some new units. Didn't talk about how many units. I actually made a note, and Evan can probably correct me, because I may be wrong. I looked at the elevations. I made notes earlier. I was thinking, how many units are they going to create? There 28 new guest rooms is what I was thinking. And I looked at the parking, and I looked at the Salisbury House, and it's interesting, he says the owner of Salisbury House is not objecting. Well, of course he wouldn't object, he's not here. So who is objecting? Okay, the neighboring properties. As you know, I'm part of SNJ, I'm part of PPC. PPC is the old funeral home that we thought we'd remodel and of course ended up redoing. We have problems now, okay, with people coming to our front door at our law firm asking for a hotel room. Okay, and if you're going to build this addition even closer, you're going to exacerbate that problem. We have problems now at PPC with people from, and no fault of Mr. Schinkel or his group, okay? And I want to be perfectly clear with that. But we have problem now with them coming and parking at PPC parking lot, okay? Mostly truckers, okay? Mostly people who try and drive around. They can't find the way, sadly, to just the way the configuration is for access to the motel. They can't find the way. So a lot of times in the summertime, okay, and I've said this to council before, they'll actually drive down the sidewalk, okay? From our office, from Penfeld, they'll drive down the sidewalk in order to get to the motel, because they can't get to the motel. They'll go to PPC, they'll come back, they'll come into our parking lot, and they'll try and find a way in. Can't find a way in, then they'll just drive down the sidewalk, because otherwise they're going to go out through the lights and down. But all of that's not important. What is important for all of you today is to determine whether or not, okay, the test for a variance has been made. So why is the variance being asked for? Why? Build it out 3 feet south. Right? I'm sure you ask yourselves that question. Right? You don't have to encroach north. Build it south 3 feet. I'm sure each and every one of you guys ask yourselves that question. Why not? Because there'd never be enough parking room. There's not enough room for parking. Now we're going to have another variance. Right? We're going to have the restaurant, and I accept that Mr. Schinkel can argue and ably argue that at the end of the day, we complement each other. We have restaurant hours and hotel hours, and they don't always conflict, and maybe they're perfect in terms of being complementary. The problem is this, is that when you live there, you actually see that people show up that work for, I forget the name of the company that installs all the towers for high voltage towers. They come in with their trucks and their trailers, and this is not downtown Toronto. So we have one, right now, your zoning bylaw, as you all will know, has one parking spot for a hotel guest room. Okay? And I challenge you to do some math and try and determine how you're going to have enough parking here. Okay? Outside of, why are we doing all of this? Why are we asking for a variance? We're asking for a variance because hotel rooms are getting bigger? No, that's nothing to do with it. That's misleading, quite frankly, with all due respect. If we drive it south, we won't have enough room for parking. Understand that, gentlemen and Ms. Penner. That's the reality. That is the reality. So, I tried to do some math today on variances and parking, and of course that's complicated because you don't know the area. And I can't come up with finding enough parking spots. That's with one parking spot per guest room, in accordance with our bylaw, which is the law, which I have to respect. But I also know that more often than not, people who stay at hotel rooms this is a drive-to hotel. This is not like downtown Toronto where we fly and take an Uber and stay at a hotel. We drive, so everybody at this hotel is going to have one car. Fair enough? They're also going to have, okay, maybe a trailer. And where are they going to park? They're going to park at SNJ parking lot, which we have an issue now where people come. It's not the end of the world, because usually around 9 o'clock they're gone, and sometimes it's a problem because most of our staff is before 9. It's not a problem at PPC because we have a big parking lot for now, but eventually we're going to have PPC too. We have the right to build a second building there. We're going to do it. And we're also going to build, okay, as many as you will not know, about 20 years ago we intended to expand our head office building back. So when Mr. Schinkel says, when Evan says, it's not going to affect their existing building, he's absolutely right. But our plan was to expand east our head office building so that we could all be under one roof. And then, of course, it will affect us because it will be that much closer. And when you say it's that much closer, does it really matter? You're probably thinking, probably not. And we can grow trees. And we've tried to grow trees, gentlemen and Ms. Penner, over the years. And we spent money on trying to grow trees. I'm just going to circulate this picture that I took tonight on the way here. It shows how well we've done with our tree planting over the years. I want to just pass it around, Mr. Hiebert, to your council members. Quite frankly, we are pathetic at trying to make trees grow there. In part because, of course, they don't get any sunlight. So, I'm not sure exactly what type of trees we could grow. Mr. Schinkel is suggesting that we do grow some trees. In a perfect world, if you can find some trees, some grass that doesn't need sunlight, perfect, we'll grow them. But we've been sadly successful. And what you see there is not the first attempt, but the second attempt of trying to grow trees there. And so you say, well, will it really matter if at the end of the day the building is that much closer? I just want to show you a picture. You guys got to understand that our office building is 100% windows, right? Some of you have not been in there. Many of you have. Every single room has windows. It's entirely glass. So when you come into an office on the south side, you see, of course, motel. Fair enough? Which is our side yards. Mr. Hiebert, as I understand, is 15 feet because we are bylaw compliant. We are law compliant. We are law-abiding citizens. At 30 feet, I'm going to pass you this photo I took today of what you see out the window of the office. circulate that, and I want you to take a moment to ponder and reflect. We have a multi-million-dollar building. The current file, 30 feet, that's what our clients see. And the variance would make it even closer. 10% closer by my math. Fair? Fair to make an exception? Or what is the rule for making a variance? We want to be good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. We don't want to object when we don't have to object. But we also really want to be good citizens. And I'm asking you, and I've said this before council, on a personal level, variances are not to be granted, okay, except in exceptional circumstances. In this case, the applicant is asking a variance to be granted so that they can build bigger rooms, so that their commercial enterprise will be more successful. Is that the test? Mr. Mayor, is that the test? Where's the law of the test? History, okay, when we look back at all of what we've done, all of you will be graded. I will be graded as to whether or not we were law-abiding citizens. And when we made an exception, there was a compelling reason to do it. A very compelling reason to do it. And if we got lots of parking, drive it south. Right? If we're trying to mislead council, drive it north and ask for a variance. Subject to any questions you may have, council.
My question for you, is this a formal objection?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I would have thought, okay.
Just for clarification.
It is, and it comes from not only myself as an owner of S&J and as a representative of S&J, as an owner of PPC, the property immediately to the east. I also spoke with Mr. Funk. I guess he's not here tonight. Mr. Funk had called me, but he's not here, so I can't speak on his behalf. But clearly it's an objection. And it's not that we don't want to be good neighbors, okay? We want the law to be complied with. Okay. Plain and simple.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Could I ask questions of administration?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you. I have a couple of questions. Were there any variances on either of these properties initially when they were built?
There was a variance applied for the days in when it was constructed. It was for their advertising sign.
But in terms of their building, where it's positioned, how it is,
Their existing building, no, there were no variances for that existing building.
so they're allowed to build the way they have built as it stands right now?
As it currently stands, that building complies with the zoning bylaw, yes.
Okay, and then the other question I have is if they weren't asking for the variance there on the north side, they could literally put up what they're requesting to put up, just shave that piece off, and they wouldn't actually have to be here. Is that correct?
They can add an addition onto their building, yes, and if they did not need the variance for that north side yard, then they could directly work on their plans and submit for a building permit, yes.
Okay, and then the last question I have is in terms of this whole building south, My understanding is it's actually an issue of hallway alignment more than a parking issue. Is that something you could comment on?
No, I can't speak on in regards to whether if they built south, there was an issue in terms of the hallway alignment. That would be more of the building permit, building code aspect. So I can't comment on the reason why they're going north versus building south.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to administration as well. Is there sufficient parking at this facility with these added rooms?
As per the zoning bylaw, and as Mr. Jodwin said during his presentation, you do require 1 parking stall per room. With the additional rooms, they will have a total of 73 rooms. They have 72 parking stalls shown on their site plan. They have been made aware that they either need to reduce the room or add an additional stall if this variance is approved and they want to construct as is.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to administration.
Go ahead.
To your knowledge, is there any variance for parking for the Salisbury House location to the south?
No, there have been no parking variances submitted for Salisbury House, for that property, which is currently Salisbury House.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Question to administration.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor. The 15 feet behind the Days Inn, is that enough room to have parking back there if they decide to put a parking lot back there?
A parking stall has to be a minimum of 20 feet in length.
Okay.
Parking aisle, two-way parking aisle has to be a minimum of 22 feet wide. 15 feet wouldn't be wide enough for a parking stall, no.
And not for diagonal parking either? Or,
No, they have to, but parking stalls have to be a minimum of 20 feet in length, regardless if they're 90 or at 45 degrees.
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I guess you can take your seat. Thank you. This time I'll allow Evan to come back and answer some of the points that were brought up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, to a few points. Obviously, parking is a separate issue, and we are aware that we are 1 parking stall short. However, extended stay rooms still require that that 10%, as Marcel Jodwin mentions. The 3 feet 2 is appropriate for that kitchenette. It is 24 units. That is correct. We got Salisbury's support for 2 reasons. Our business complements theirs, and also our parking is it not only business complements, but parking complements as well. And inevitably, we feel like this is going to support a need that our community has as good business goes. In summary, we feel that this back east area of our property is not currently adjacent to their current building, which Marcel did mention does not affect their current building, and we still do believe that it won't affect their future building, as it's in like kind and quality to our existing building. We hope that and agree with administration's support in this variance. Thank you very much.
I do have a question for you. Now, it was brought up the parking in question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, are you prepared to reduce the size of the build by a suite or add a parking spot?
Yes, we are. We would do one of the following, one of those 2 suggestions, correct. We would either reduce 1 room or find another parking stall within the design as we continue to develop. In either case, it wouldn't affect how deep our rooms would be.
Okay. Well, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Schinkel, the question was raised about why not expand to the south and to the north. Could you just state for the record what the reason is that for the direction that you're going?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the alignment of the hallways are critical to egress and a few other building codes and congruence in our building and the space it requires or the footprint. And that's why our hallway needs to be aligned. Yes.
Okay. Well, then I will, are there any other questions of council? Okay. Then, Mr. Schinkel, I guess you can take your seat, and I will ask again if there's anyone here with questions, comments, or objections to this file.
I know I'm out of order, but I just want to say that, of course, we don't have the benefit of any plans, or they say that the plan, they want to make the hallways align, how that wasn't part of the submission that I saw before council. I tried to get the plans. Maybe you guys have building plans, something that I didn't see, PDF or otherwise. But I guess I asked the question this way. Why not make the north rooms then the same size as the existing rooms, and the south rooms bigger, if that's what needs to happen? Isn't that the way you'd do it if you wanted to be a law-abiding citizen? Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilor Swayze?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
Second by Councilor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whenever we have a variance application, we do consider a number of factors. And just to talk for a moment about this, about rule of law, obviously it's important to follow rules, and yes, our zoning bylaw. There have been times where we've denied variances after the fact and where sunrooms have had to be taken down and other changes have had to be made. And so we obviously do not tolerate people ignoring the zoning bylaw. Just to be clear, variances are part of the rule of law. It is part of the process. It is not unusual to have applications for conditional uses, for variances. And there are times where we change the zoning bylaw as well. Part of the rule of law process is that there is an opportunity for anyone who wants to make an application for a variance to be able to appear before council in a public hearing. That public hearing must be properly advertised. Any owners of the nearby vicinity get proper notification. The media is here observing that public hearing, so that way everyone has access to the same information. And after getting all that information, we also get input from our staff, and our staff review it, and they provide us with recommendations. And in this case, our staff are recommending approval. Our staff are very responsible people. They are not in the habit of recommending variances that would have a hugely detrimental impact on neighboring properties. At the end of the day, council listens to all the information we hear from the applicant, we hear from objections, we let people speak in full, we hear from our staff, and we get all of that together. And then in accordance with the rule of law, we look at the request and then we make a decision. That is how the legislation is written. That's what the Municipal Act authorizes. There's nothing wrong with hearing a variance application and then deciding. How do we decide? It's a case-by-case basis. We look at the overall circumstances. There is no one absolute test for every variance because variances are different. So we look at, for example, the size of the variance. In this case, it's a 3.2-foot variance, relatively small variance. We also look at the reason for it. And the reason in this case is that a business that has been successful wishes to expand. And they've given a solid rationale for the reasons for their expansion. And then we look at what any concerns that are raised. In this case here, most of the concerns that I heard raised were about the building as it currently exists, which is all fully compliant with our zoning bylaw, and I don't want to ignore rule of law. And so when you look at all these factors in total, I think it's appropriate that we approve the variance and allow this to go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Swayze. Anything further, Councilor Penner?
I don't think there's anything I could add to that, so no.
Anything further of council? Councilor Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council knows that I've been critical at different times as to a variance and the amount of variance. And I know in the past, we've had some, a variance to me is a slight reduction or change from what the law says. And when I look at this one, we're looking at 3 feet 2 inches on 15 feet. To me, that is a variance. And this is not, we're not going from 15 feet down to 3 feet. We're going from 15 feet down to 11 feet 10 inches. And so from a councillor point of view and looking at this one, I don't have an issue with the variance. I think this is a variance, I think it's applicable, and I don't have an issue with it.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Well, I do agree with Councillor Penner. There's not a lot you can add here, but I will restate that our staff have done their due diligence. They don't come forward with a variance and give a recommendation to approve unless they feel it will fit into the area and that it won't have a detrimental effect on the other properties. And for that reason, I believe that they've done their work. As we read the report and we look at everything, and we've heard from Mr. Schinkel, we've heard from Mr. Jolwin, and I just feel the right thing to do is to give the variance. So call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Council will move to 7A. This is delegation from Steinbach Chamber of Commerce, the Financial Report and Economic Development Office. Thank you, Christine and Michelle, for coming. Thank you so much. And we won't waste any more time. We'll give you the floor.
Perfect. I'm just going to set up here. Just take me a second. Okay, thank you so much for having us. I wanted to start by just thanking you for participating in last week's elections forum. Sincerely, just myself, having had an opportunity to hear from all of you, and I know some of you made some extra efforts to be present that evening on short notice. I think it was well received by the public, and I definitely appreciated hearing your comments and having had to be in your seat. I thought you guys did really well in terms of responding to all those questions in an hour and a half, just continuously having to come up with those responses. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. That was really appreciated, and again, like I said, well received. Michelle and I, for those of, I think you all know me, Christine Beaumont, I'm the chair of the Steinbach Chamber. I'm also a financial advisor with Paul Kraft Financial, a business here in Steinbach, and I'm joined by Michelle Bazitny, who is the current executive director of the Steinbach Chamber of Commerce, but soon to be the new director of economic development. So we're really happy that she'll be taking that transition likely in November, and that seat for the executive director is currently, we're in the process of filling that position. So anyway, don't want to take too much of your time, but this evening I'd like to report and just talk to you a little bit about what the Chamber has been up to in the last year. And we're combining our report on economic development and the Chamber, since we're carrying both of those at the moment, and then I'll welcome your questions. But so if that's okay, I'll start with the presentation. So wanted to just show you the names of people on our board of directors. We have just had our AGM in September. We have 2 new directors, Emma Boulanger from Coldwell Banker Preferred Real Estate and Rob Workington from the Steinbach Credit Union have joined the team. And so we've got a great group of people around the table. In terms of staffing, there's a long list here because it includes not only the Steinbach Chambers staff, but also Eastman Immigrant Services staff. And we're up to 20 staff. And when you look through that list of names, there's quite a lot of diversity as well. Michelle, how many languages are spoken in the office? 10 to 15 different languages are represented in the office. So it's a very, very diverse group. And in terms of the chamber, so I just mentioned Michelle's change, and we've also just added Lindsay Banman to the team under Member Relations Manager. And so really proud of the team. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is definitely due to the work of the staff. The Steinbach Chamber's mission is to unite and represent Steinbach and area businesses in the belief that the resulting economic growth and stability provides an enhanced quality of life for the entire community. The point I want to make there, and if you've seen me speak in the last couple of weeks, I'm a little bit of a broken record on this one, but in terms of community and in terms of the job that we do, we're a member-driven organization. So obviously we are there for the benefit of our members, but at the core of what we do is really for the benefit of the entire community. So similarly to the work that you do, at the end of the day, we're just trying to make our community better. A few years ago, we set out a vision, leading growth and connecting people. And I think that vision has really served us well in terms of helping us to definitely in the last year think bigger, but in another sense, also over the last number of years with COVID, kind of narrow our focus down into what does our membership really need and what are they asking of us. And we did a survey in 2019, which helped us to answer some of those questions and guided us over the last few years. And now we've just run another survey in the last month or couple of months, and that will help us continue to lead us forward. So the rest of my presentation kind of jumps into that leading growth and connecting people to give you some examples of how we're doing those things or how we, what does leading growth mean to our organization? And this is something that I heard some of you speak to last week at the forum was advocacy. So that was music to my ears because we think about advocacy all the time on our end as well, not only thinking about the advocacy within our community, but also how are we showcasing our community and how are we making sure that outside of our borders, decision makers are hearing what we have to say and what we're doing here in Steinbach. So we've made a point of being very engaged with the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce. Not only have Michelle sits on actually she was the chair of the executives of the Manitoba Chamber, so we have a very strong engagement there. And continue to share information with them and get information back from there that we can share to our membership and to the community here. We're engaged with, obviously, our provincial leaders, so Kelvin Gertson, as well as the Minister of, I'm going to get it right or wrong here, but Trade, Investment and Economic Development, Cliff Cullen. We had an event with him at Quarry Oaks. Councillor Penner and Mayor Funk attended, as well as some of the representation from outside of our region at the RM of Hanover. So that was another thing that I heard from you last week in terms of building some of those bridges with our neighbors and making sure that we can have a regional approach. So those are some of the things that that come to mind for us as well. We've engaged in the last year with the Deputy Minister's Office, so the Deputy Minister of Economic Development. We're in communication with economic development organizations, such as Economic Development Association of Manitoba, as well as the Rural Manitoba Economic Development Organization, which we hope to have or be able to advocate for an office here in Steinbach. We're also engaged with the Business Council of Manitoba, which is, again, a member-based organization for some of the larger businesses in Manitoba. And I mentioned the neighboring arms as well. In terms of leadership, we have a role in terms of showing leadership for our member businesses. We've had a big focus on supporting local. You may have seen the video that was developed in the last year on supporting local businesses through COVID. We also have a More For You Here video that was done several years ago, and we're working on a version 2.0 of that, which will be released this fall. So that's great, not only for our organization, but I think it benefits the entire community. Merry Local Christmas campaign is coming back again this year, focusing on helping to educate the public on supporting our local businesses. In terms of leadership, we also think about how can we be leaders in our community and engage the community. We've had Burger Days, which you may have participated in this fall. 15 restaurants participated. 8,696 burgers were sold. So I don't know what the population exactly of Steinbach is, but that's almost, is that 50% of people having had a burger? I'm just trying to do some math, but $160,000 in burger sales alone, which doesn't account for, locally sourced products, other sales. So we really see this thing has taken a life of its own and has become an economic driver in its own. The parade, their staff, I remember hearing Michelle a few times just say, I want to organize a parade. Like, when are we going to be able to get people together again and organize a parade, which we successfully did this August. So we're really proud of that. Other areas where we are looking to support organizations, have a seat at the table, make sure we're tuned in and we can support where we can. We're a member of the Southeast Event Group. We have representation there from our group. The Bethesda Foundation, so in terms of healthcare, we don't have an official linkage to the Bethesda Foundation, but being a board member myself and being chair of the Steinbach Chamber, there's a natural linkage that's happening there. And just recently, we received an invitation to attend the Rural Physician Recruitment and Retention Summit, which happened in Portage la Prairie. So I think Councillor Siemens, you mentioned doctor recruitment as something in the election forum. So we made sure that we invited, we received an invitation as a chamber to participate. And we also invited Mr. Pauls, and I always forget his first name, Fred Pauls, who attended with Michelle a summit on basically trying to recruit doctors in Manitoba in rural areas, and there were different municipalities and different representation from chambers across Manitoba there, so we were proud to represent our community there. And then in terms of another piece of leading growth has to do with economic development, and in our recent survey, our members definitely want us to continue to work on that, and I'll speak to that just a little bit further in my presentation. In terms of connecting people, there's always that connection between our members that creates synergies. We're proud to have come back to returning to in-person events. You just see in the rooms the energy that's happening when people are together. The other thing that's important to us is connecting our members to resources and information, as well as key decision makers, leaders, influencers in the community. I mentioned having a seat at the table. Really, at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do, is either ourselves have a seat at the table or connect our members, such as Mr. Pauls, making sure that he has a seat at the table where it's something that's relevant to him. We've made a big effort in terms of our communication strategy for our members and for the community and for yourselves to know what we're up to. And it's made it as far as putting us in the news, global news and CBC News. So it's reaching outside of our community. And I think we had one of our board members that really wanted us to make sure that Steinbach was on the weather map. We made that request too. We went as far as doing that. So our public relations strategy has been something that we are made a lot of effort towards and are proud of. Eastman Immigrant Services, I just want to talk about Eastman Immigrant Services with you. I know this is something that's really important, especially with the labor shortage that we have at the moment. We need people in our community, and we're very proud of the growth that Eastman Immigrant Services has had, even during the time when we're in a pandemic and there is very little immigration happening. We were able to expand the services of Eastman Immigrant Services, and none of the services were interrupted during that period. We've hired an additional 3 more employees and a new program, the home instruction program for parents of preschool youngsters, is new to ICE this fall. We have seen an increase in the clients that are served. Prior to the pandemic, approximately 250 to 300 families or individuals were served by ICE. That went down to 133, 129 in 2020 and 21. And year to date, the organization has served already 385 newcomers. And this is already an old number. It's probably about a month old, so that would be a higher number. So a huge influx in terms of new people choosing our community, and we're able to serve them with the services that we have, which is excellent. I wanted to touch on Ukrainian refugees, because a lot of newcomers have been coming from Ukraine, as we all know. Some of you attended, Mayor Funk and Councillor Siemens, you participated in the Ukrainian bus tours that we had in June. Those were very successful in terms of connecting employers and allowing an opportunity for some of those newcomers to actually tour the community. We've changed the strategy or the approach a little bit. So what happens is Ukrainian refugees land in Winnipeg, they are housed there in hotels, and they receive a number of services there in Winnipeg first. But we have been able to, now what we do, instead of getting them on a bus and bringing them here and covering the cost of all of that, there are organizations in Winnipeg that are helping to connect those refugees to rural Manitoba and different communities in rural Manitoba. So we hosted a job fair on October 20th in Winnipeg at the hotel, and Michelle and Gwen have attended the hotel and been able to connect with individuals, provide presentations, and further to that, some of these refugees are signing up for mini tours by an organization called Welcome Place and Manitoba Interfaith Immigration Council, who have a bus and who regularly take newcomers out to Steinbach, and we get to tour them and connect with them through ICE. So that's been a really good partnership. We also have an agreement with the province in order to house some of these refugees that are in a transition period in terms of close to securing work and just waiting to secure housing. In that transition period, rather than being in Winnipeg, they can be housed in Steinbach for a short period of time. So proud to have that piece continuing to work for us as we try to connect employers and bring people to our community, allow them the choice to choose our community. In terms of Steinbach economic development, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Now we were talking about Chamber and Eastman Immigrant Services, and now sort of what I would call the third pillar of our organization, which is Steinbach economic development. And really the objectives for the program haven't changed from other times that we've talked about it. It's really about what the Chamber's role in this is, overseeing and laying the foundation for facilitating growth and expansion of existing businesses, attracting new investment to Steinbach, and then playing a supportive role for other community organizations and stakeholders. Things like a supportive role for different projects that will impact the community in different ways. Things like the growth of healthcare, the growth of post-secondary education, recreational opportunities, again, having a seat at the table for those and in those discussions. Some of the activities in the last year for Steinbach economic development: number one, establishing a corporation, so Steinbach Economic Development Corporation. This has been important, and there's a number of reasons for that. One of them is to access other sources of funding. We have a small budget for economic development, and certain sources of funding require that entity to be a separate entity from the chamber. And we want to look to build on that partnership again with the chamber and Eastman Immigrant Services. I want to clarify, because I know that there is a Community Development Corporation. So the Community Development Corporation and the Steinbach Economic Development Corporation, similar but very different. So my understanding is that the Community Development Corporation is really about land use planning, managing the city's land assets that are acquired for future industrial and infrastructure needs. We don't want anything to do with that piece, except for coordinating our efforts. The Steinbach Economic Development Corporation would be independent, obviously, of the city, and really about the economic development piece, the investment attraction piece, branding and promotion of the community. So that's how we see that fitting in, and this new corporation fitting in. The second thing is a capacity of investment attraction study and workforce assessment. So we hired an outside organization called ROI Research on Investment, and a study has been conducted, and we're just in the final stages of finalizing that study. With the transition in staffing with economic development, we just have to, once Michelle takes over the role, she'll be digging her feet into that piece, and then we'll have final report, which we'll be happy to share with council when we have that. A small part of that as well is a workforce assessment, so obviously speaking to labor in the region. The other piece that I wanted to just mention as well, when we talk about investment attraction and the reason for the study is really an overview of all the industry sectors, the local dynamics, the manufacturing dynamics, the value proposition that Steinbach has, so that the community can be investment ready, and so that we can take a focused approach on where we attract new investment, where are we well positioned to attract, which sectors, which industries, and I think, and even in discussions with the people conducting the study, there's enormous potential to drive many investments to the area, and we have good infrastructure to accommodate the growth. In terms of labor force, different points there. Talent attraction is important. We talked about immigration being one of the potential solutions in bringing more people here to fill job vacancies. We are also playing a supportive role to the local education task force, and we've identified youth, and just making sure that we can attract and retain our youth in the community. And finally, advocacy and partnerships are a big part of the economic development piece. I spoke to those because they kind of overlap between Steinbach, Chamber, and economic development. But I think when we have all of our roles filled within our staffing, we'll be able to, really create extra capacity and create synergies, which we've seen in the last year have been just amazing to have those three pillars, the business community, the immigration, and the economic development pieces all connected and working together. So that's all I had to say. That's enough. I've been rambling on. If you have some questions, I'm happy. Michelle and I are happy to address any of your questions.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great presentation, and you're definitely very, very busy there, doing lots of things in our community and helping grow our community in such a great way. But I will open it up. Council, are there any questions for Christine? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. When we're talking about directing the EDO, I understand it's under the umbrella of the Chamber of Commerce, but is there overseers from the business community or personnel? And if so, who from the business community is overseeing it?
Okay, so the way that we have structured things to date, but the structure is going to evolve a little bit. There are 26 stakeholders, business owners in the community, and we can provide you with a list of those if you'd like. No.
Thank you.
Yeah. From that group of 26, we have a subgroup which we term our operating committee, which is kind of the executive of the stakeholder group, if you will. And within that is the group that provides direction to the Economic Development Officer, or the Director of Economic Development. We have 3 people representing the Steinbach Chamber. So myself, Tracy Grominski, who is the Vice Chair, and Wayne Patram, who's our past Chair. The 3 of us are on that operating committee. And then we have Bob Schinkel, Mr. Newstater, Waldo. We have Chad Brown. And we had Carolyn Peters. So those would be 4 stakeholders that were on that group. As we look to incorporate and formalize Steinbach Economic Development, then we will likely add a few people to that group. We'd like to make sure that in our bylaws, there will be at least 1 representative of the Steinbach Chamber. And we'd like to leave a seat open as well for City of Steinbach Council within that organization. So something to discuss further. But does that answer? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? That proves that you've done such a fantastic job. There's no question.
Thank you.
When everyone understands what's been said and the information you gave, there won't be any questions.
I would invite you, individually. I'm happy to have individual discussions with each and every one of you if you want. And I know, Michelle, our doors are always open in terms of having chats offline, and we're happy to keep you informed on what we're doing. And we want this partnership to continue to align and flourish, and look forward to more in the future with you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Council, I will just reiterate that too. I've had many meetings with Christine and phone calls, and I've come to really appreciate her in her role at the Chamber, and she really has a passion for business. She has a passion for the Chamber, and you have a passion for our community. And I thank you for being where you are and accepting the challenge to doing what you do. And I know that I feel the Chamber is in great hands, that you're there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Council, we'll move on to number 9C. This is building permits. It's on page 25 of our package. We're looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner. Second by Councillor Siemens. Go ahead, Councillor Penner.
I don't have a lot to add. It's a strong year. There's a few things coming down the pipe as well. So overall, it's another positive year for Steinbeck in terms of growth. And then when you see those immigration numbers, it's no surprise, right?
We're going to need more houses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing further.
Anything further, Council? Anything closing? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we have 9D, the business licenses on page 26. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Hiebert. Any comments?
Nothing further.
Anything further?
Thanks.
We'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We've got 9E, excavator licenses on page 27. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Swagstra. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As their name says, they're Dig Right backhoe, and if it was a different name, perhaps we might not be approving this.
Anything further?
I can't add anything.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Well, Council, it's about that time of the year. The Board of Revision is about to convene. We are looking to appoint 3 that have done it, are coming back from last year. We've got Matt Wheeler, Mr. Jack Kaler, and Ray Roy Ends. We're just looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Swagstra, second by Councillor Penner. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members who've been on for council for a while will remember that council members used to be the Board of Revision. And years ago, the decision was made that that's not a good situation. It makes far more sense to have independent people on the Board of Revision because you're not supposed to be thinking like a councillor. You're supposed to be looking at the merits of the particular case there, which is completely different in terms of the decisions that they're making. And so I think it's appropriate that we appoint these individuals and thank them for their service.
Anything further, Councillor Penner?
No.
Anything further, Council? Nothing closing?
Nope.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we have 9G. This is the Steinbach Arts Council resolution request. They are, in the past, we've done some renovations with them. They've had grants from the also co-op and other grants they've gotten. And this is just a request of us making a resolution to support them in their request for granting from our province. That's the way I understand that. So we just have to make a resolution of support. So just looking for a motion. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. Any comments?
Yeah, I've certainly noticed the improvements there over the years. I know we kind of partnered on that with them a few years back. So I'd be very happy to see them get this money so they can further update that space.
Thank you. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Anything further of council? Nothing closing? Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council, are there any questions of council at this time? Okay, seeing none. We'll go to 11, correspondence and petitions. We've got the 11A is the Minister of Municipal Relations. This is referring to the 2022-23 Municipal Operating Grant. It's on page 40. How would you like to proceed? Just take it as information. Thank you. And we've got 11B. This is Minister of Municipal Relations, Mobility Disadvantaged Transportation Program. And yeah, that is a grant as well. Council, how would you like to proceed? Take as information. Okay. Thank you. There's no other business. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Council, this was our last meeting in this term. Our next meeting will be the inaugural meeting of City Council on November 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. And the regular council meeting will follow at